From Capitol Hill to an ongoing recovery effort nearby in the Potomac River, what we know, what we don't know, and what to watch. I'm Jenna, and this is Smarter News. We had a big news week, and some of these news items we expected. We knew we would get a read on the U.S. economy, for example. We learned the U.S. economy grew in the last 3 months of 2024, slightly less than expected and slower than previous months, but consumer spending still remains strong. We knew we would get some news on interest rates. We learned from the Federal Reserve that there's still some concerns about inflation, and so there's not a rush to cut borrowing rates. And this impacts our rates that we're paying for car loans and credit card debt. We anticipated testimony from cabinet nominees. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a moment. What we did not expect is a midair collision to occur about a 10-minute drive from the White House on a cold Wednesday evening. And here's what we know so far about this incident, and it's still not a lot. On Wednesday night, a military helicopter collided with a regional passenger jet flying from Kansas to Reagan Airport. The two aircrafts fell into the Potomac, and law enforcement says there are no survivors. We still do not know exactly why this happened, and that's one of the questions that President Trump tried to tackle the day after.
Before 9 p.m. last night, an American Airlines regional jet carrying 60 passengers and 4 crew collided with an Army Black Hawk helicopter carrying 3 military service members over the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. My administration will set the highest possible bar for aviation safety. We have to have our smartest people. It doesn't matter what they look like, how they speak, who they are. It matters intellect, talent, the word talent. You have to be talented, naturally talented geniuses.
His comments there immediately led to more questions.
Are you saying this crash was somehow caused and the result of diversity hiring? And what evidence have you seen to support these claims?
It just could have been. We have a high standard. We've had a much higher standard than anybody else. And there are things where you have to go by brain power. You have to go by psychological quality. And psychological quality is a very important element of it. These are various very powerful tests that we put to use, and they were terminated by Biden. Certainly for an air traffic controller, we want the brightest, the smartest, the sharpest. We want somebody that's psychologically superior, and that's what we're going to have.
So big picture, eliminating DEI is part of the president's agenda. He has discussed it before. Whether it's a factor in this story is to be determined. The appropriateness of him bringing it up is also being debated. And asking questions about it is completely fair. But if you watch the press corps' reaction, many of the questions after he was talking about this really had to do with his opinions rather than about the incident itself. And here's some questions that were not asked that we'd like to learn a little bit more about. For example, is there any evidence of a mechanical failure of any kind? Is there any evidence of terrorism? Is there any evidence of a health emergency? Is there any evidence that this was intentional for any reason? I'm not suggesting these things are true, by the way, but these are some obvious questions given this day and age that we should ask so we could eliminate them. One thing we did learn from the president is he made sort of this passing comment about night vision technology and whether or not the military pilots were using it and whether that was a factor. I think that's something that we should follow up on. The National Transportation Safety Board says the data recorders remain in the water and that investigators need more time, obviously, to collect information, evidence, and learn more. In the meantime, we expect to learn more about the victims. From young figure skaters to a young pilot just engaged to local union workers, their stories will slowly emerge in the next few days. But right now, the who, what, where, when, we have some answers. The exact how and why, we don't have enough answers yet. What this story underscores is the importance of leadership and why the president and those in power matter, from the cabinet level down to local law enforcement in our communities, why intelligence gathering matters, why investigations matter. And speaking of this, we had 2 cabinet nominees on Capitol Hill Thursday, one for the Director of National Intelligence and another for the Director of the FBI. The person nominated for Director of National Intelligence is a Lieutenant Colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve and former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. She testified before the Senate Committee on Intelligence, and here's a little bit of what she had to say.
I enlisted in the Army because of the horrific terrorist attack on September 11th. And volunteered to deploy to Iraq in 2005, where I served in a medical unit. After nearly 22 years in uniform with 3 combat deployments to the Middle East and Africa, I'm now a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve, where I serve as a battalion commander of soldiers in Oklahoma, Missouri, and Arkansas. I served in Congress for 8 years on the Homeland Security, Foreign Affairs, and Armed Services committees. And it's my experience in the military and in the halls of Congress that have given me a deep understanding of the complex challenges that our nation faces. Now, before I close, I want to warn the American people who are watching at home. You may hear lies and smears in this hearing that'll challenge my loyalty to and my love for our country. Those who oppose my nomination imply that I am loyal to something or someone other than God, my own conscience, and the Constitution of the United States, accusing me of being Trump's puppet, Putin's puppet, Assad's puppet, a guru's puppet, Modi's puppet, not recognizing the absurdity of simultaneously being the puppet of 5 different puppet masters. The fact is, what truly unsettles my political opponents is I refuse to be their puppet.
Her critics have a range of concerns, including some past comments she's made on U.S. intelligence gathering, the methods and decisions behind that. Also, as a congresswoman, she traveled to meet with President Assad of Syria in a trip that raised a lot of questions because Syria is a state sponsor of terrorism. And so the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, has a very key position. This person oversees the IC, the intelligence community, which consists of 18 agencies, including the CIA and the Department of Homeland Security and beyond. This person also serves as the principal advisor to the president, serves on the National Security Council, on the Homeland Security Council, so it's a really big job, and we'll continue to watch this. Meanwhile, not far away from Gabbard's hearing was another one for the director of the FBI, and the person nominated for that position is Kash Patel. He once worked as a public defender and also served under the Obama administration, where his job was prosecuting terrorists. He testified in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Democrats who don't like him call him a radical extremist. For Republicans that do like him, Patel's talk about fixing erosion of trust in the FBI is something that they support. Here's an example of what Patel had to say about how he grew up as the son of immigrants and his response to a question from Senator Durbin, a key Democrat on the committee.
As the senator pointed out, where I was born, and we were raised in a household of my father's 7 siblings, their spouses, and at least half a dozen children. That's the only way we knew how to do things at the time in the 70s and 80s, the Indian way. But we would soon learn the American way. These values have shaped and been the driving force of my career in 16 years of government service. Protecting the rights of the Constitution is of the utmost importance to me and has been every single time I've taken that oath of office.
My question to you, though, is do you think America is safer because President Trump issued these pardons to 1,600 of these criminal defendants, many of whom violently assaulted our police in the Capitol?
Senator, America will be safe when we don't have 200,000 drug overdoses in 2 years. America will be safe when we don't have 50 homicides in a day.
So you just won't answer the question.
I'm
going to say,
here.
I don't think we're safer.
You know, I think it's important that you hear from these individuals, that you get an idea of some of these exchanges. But after watching these hearings, and maybe it's in light of this horrible accident in D.C., I'm unsure about the news value beyond what we just shared. And I think we all need this reminder this week. It is the president's prerogative about who he wants to serve with him in his cabinet. Congress has a role. It's their prerogative to ask whatever questions they want of those individuals. And the American people elected a president and a Congress to do just this. So we're going to have to let it play out. And soon we'll learn if these individuals are even confirmed. What stands out most to me this week, including over the last 24 hours, is the absence of forward-looking questions in all of these stories. You know, for example, asking a cabinet nominee, how will you make us safer? What programs do you actually believe in? What programs do you not? What can we do better? What is your first task on day one? What is one thing you're doing today for those flying into Reagan Airport that will make them a little bit more safe than yesterday? This is where I end the week wondering how to serve you better, because no matter who sits in these seats, Republicans or Democrats, we need answers to these questions. And that's why nonpartisan news focused on the people over politics, over agenda, really matters. So thank you for your support of quick, concise, nonpartisan, smarter news. More to come on all these stories. In the meantime, have a great weekend.